So, I always start with so. It's an unnecessary start. Good day, I suppose, or hello, and depending where you are around this planet, then good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And the same for those of you who are watching this later on YouTube, a very warm welcome. Now, this is the first of a series that's not quite fixed. I'm not quite sure how much of this text that we're studying, how much we'll do. I'm hoping we'll do at least the first four chapters. Let's see how it goes. But anyway, it's the first of a series that's going to go well into 2025. And so it's a kind of, for me, a special occasion, and I'll explain that a bit later on. But anyway, first things first, as always, when we are studying Dharma on our Bodhisattva path, we always make sure to stop and center and focus our minds, our relative minds, on the most wonderful, beautiful thing a relative mind can ever do, which is to set itself on bodhicitta. Bodhicitta, like we have two eyes, is described as one eye on enlightenment, the other eye on loving compassion for sentient beings, and really, really wanting to help them. And knowing this double vision is a complementary vision. We will help everyone by becoming enlightened, and we'll only get enlightened by helping everyone. So this twofold objective is vital. And as we saw in the last course, at the end of the last course, when we're really committed as a bodhisattva, then in all 6 periods of the day, we stop at least once and we renew our bodhisattva commitment, not just an airy-fairy wish, a commitment where we've given ourselves. So let's do that now with a very, very kind and loving and strong, powerful motivation. We take refuge in the Buddha, in the Dharma, and in the community of most noble minds. From this moment on until we reach the very heart of enlightenment. Through the practice of generosity and all 6 transcendent virtues, may we reach total awakening and every enlightened quality to be able to truly help sentient beings so lost in samsara. May each and every being be well. May they live long, may they be healthy, well provided for, with good friends, may they find respect and live in places of peace and plenty, and most of all, may they practice Dharma. May they each create the causes for those good circumstances to be their wealth in future lives. May they be free from suffering and from creating causes of future suffering. May they discover the natural, sacred well-being that's totally beyond suffering and attain great equanimity that's free of closeness or distance from anyone. Deyata shame shamavati shameta shatru Am kure marijite karota keyorite juvati oloyane Vishudani male malapana ye kukure kaka grase Grasana umuki paramuki amuki shamedawane Sawa graha bandhanane nigri dva sawa bhava pravadina Vimukta marapasha savitva buddha mudra Anudgatita Savamare Putsarita Parishuddhi Pigashantu Savamara Kama. Glorious Guru, source of all blessing, ever present above our heads on lotus and moon seat, through your immense kindness, ever sustain us, that the accomplishments of body, speech, and mind flow from you, and we are one. So today we start our studies of this, what we're going to call it. Its proper title, either in Sanskrit or in Tibetan, is long. And once we get into it, you'll see we can't quite call it Buddha Nature Teachings, because we're going to study 7 chapters, and Buddha Nature's number 4. And we're looking at something much broader than Buddha nature. And so we can call it it is called the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, or the Ratnagotra Vibhanga in Sanskrit, Tekpachempe in Chutlame Tenchu in Tibetan. It's a lot. So I suggest you get used to the Tibetan abbreviation, how in Tibetan we refer to it. It's called Jut Lama. So Lama, you know that word, Lama. So Jut Lama. So that's what I'll be calling it as a name for simplicity. Now, my feeling this morning is we need, first of all, a big party to kick off this, all of this study. It's such a special text. It's, as we'll see today, it comes from the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. It's what all the Buddha's teachings were leading to. It's what it's all about. And then in my life, one way or another, making different translations, it was, how can you say, a very central part of my own journey for some 17 years. And it's always a very special thing to share it with you. I mean, 17 years of research, of studying with lamas, spending hours and hours and hours with them, word by word, idea by idea, discussing, then coming back as the years go by with yes, but, and questions. So for me, it's a very important text. It was very important because I think Katya and myself were the first people asked to translate it by the 16th Karmapa. There have been quite a few translations since, and some excellent work has been done, but for one reason or another, we made the first translation of the root text. So for me, this text is a big deal. It's very important. It's a celebration. And because it comes from Buddha Maitreya, then it's also a connection with him. So it's wonderful. We're here together today, studying together in these things. You know, you've got your body, I've got my body, these lives, these impermanent lives. And we're all going to die and get another one and another one and another one. So I hope we're all going to meet up when Buddha Maitreya comes. That's quite a way into the future, but I think through studying this text, we make a strong enough connection between us and future Buddha Maitreya, and between us as Dharma brothers and sisters, that in whatever shape or form you're in, and however beings are at that time, when we do meet up again, it will be there, and it will be wonderful. It will be wonderful. Just now we're going into a dark age. It's not so brilliant what's going on in this world in which we live. By the time Maitreya comes, it's going to be so much smoother, easier, clearer. People's human relationships will be wonderful. Not all of the stuff there is these days. Does anyone have an absolutely nice, clear, pure relationship with anybody that you know? We're tricky, complicated human beings. So it won't be like that. It will be as it ought to be, beautiful. And the world will be harmonious when Maitreya teaches. So I really believe this. I really believe this. And I see it through those eyes. We're here in a very impermanent way doing something very important for the future. So anyway, I thought if we were Tibetans, we'd probably start with 3 days of prayers and all the and lots of important things and symbolism and fire ceremony, goodness knows what, but we'd make a big deal out of it. So what I just said, that will do. That was our big deal. Okay, we just had a party. And so now this text I learned traditionally 3 times, all the way through with Khenpo Sultim, 2 times at least with Khenchen Tranga Rinpoche, once more briefly with Taisitupa. So there is a traditional way of presenting it. It's a big text. There are more than 400 teaching verses. And then there are commentaries, famous commentaries, which of course are much longer because they comment each verse. You may remember, for instance, last year or the year before, we did the Karmapa's Mahamudra prayer. That was 24 verses, and that took us some months. So this is a big, big text. And so the way we studied it traditionally was with an introduction. So the introduction's not the text itself, but it's very important in the topics that it covers. It gives us context. So I've been thinking about that, and I want to make these teachings interesting for you, accessible, meaningful. And we certainly need to start with that classical introduction. But I think if any of you are like me, it's like when you get a package through the post. You want to cut it open and rip it open to see what's inside. The packaging is kind of secondary. So a whole session today on packaging, on context, may be interesting for some of you, but I'd rather at least we got to the actual verses of the text itself. So what I thought to do today was to go through the classical introduction fairly quickly, and then as the following sessions come along, from time to time we can look at these topics in a little more detail. So anyway, we've got this, we're studying this text. Now, why is it so important? It's important because it is the text. It is the text for all Mahayana Buddhist schools about what we call Buddha nature, or in another way, to be more accurate, the third phase of the Buddha's teaching, which is called the third Dharmacharya, the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. So that whole phase, and the most important phase of the Buddha's teaching, for us who accept 3 phases, which not all Buddhists do, but for those of us who do, I'm talking about Tibetan Buddhists and then various Zen schools, Mahayana schools in Korea and Vietnam and so on, then this is the text that sums up what the Buddha said. This text sums up what the Buddha said. So where did he say it? Well, we'll come to that in a minute, but in some, depending which analysis you go to, in some 10 or 15, or if we stretch it, 18 sutras, so the Buddha's own speech, which gives us the heart meaning of the whole reason the Buddha was teaching, which takes us to the very deepest meaning and truest meaning of shunyata, voidness, emptiness, as we studied in our last talk. So this is the text that sums it up. So it's important for all Mahayana schools. In the Tibetan Buddhist schools, the 4 main ones, then all of us have this as our reference. So it's very important. And then if we look at more generally Tantra, Vajrayana practice, Tantric practice, then there are 4 levels of Tantra. The highest is called Highest Yoga Tantra, and many of our deeper practices like Chakrasamvara and so on, Hevajra, come from Highest Yoga Tantra. The deep practices that people do, like the Tummo, the heat yoga, the dream yoga, what people call clear light and so on, Bardo teachings, they're all taught through Chakrasamvara, all those other tantras. So in Highest Yoga Tantra, the highest of the 4, then if you don't know these teachings, you can't really practice. You'll be practicing religion. Your relationship to what people call the deity, to the Buddha, will be like those of other religions. There will be duality, it won't be right. We need the Buddha nature teachings, and in fact, the clearer your realization of the meaning of the Buddha nature teachings is, the better your practice will be. So the practice itself, people sit for hours, you visualize, you do lots of things, you say mantras, the visualization's complicated, there are many aspects to it. It's busy. Vajrayana practice is busy. So you can do all of that and not get much result if you don't understand these teachings. If you understand these teachings, your practice will develop like a rocket, things will happen, you will change, realization will happen. So the previous Kalu Rinpoche was very important in our Kaju lineage. When the 16th Karmapa was dying, he told his main followers, and especially the main Tulkus, the main heart sons and Rinpoches, he said, when I'm gone, you should turn to Kalu Rinpoche for advice. Kalu Rinpoche was so skilled in many ways, and he had been, in particular, retreat master for Palpung Monastery in Tibet. So when in Samiling we were setting up study, which was where I was deeply involved, and Akron Rinpoche asked the 16th Karmapa, and Trungpa Rinpoche and Kalu Rinpoche what over the years we should study in Samyeling, because Akon Rinpoche needed to know which teachers he needed to bring, because he wanted to bring the best teacher for each text. So Kalu Rinpoche, who had spent so many years himself in Tibet, and he had the realization, the depth. That's why the Karmapa told all the Tulkus, go to him, because he's got the inner deep experience, very stable. So he said, even if you're going to spend your whole life meditating in a cave somewhere, there are 3 texts you can't, it's not the text, it's the knowledge that's in the text, 3 texts you can't do without. In other words, your meditation won't work. And even if you're not at all inclined to study, you've got to, for those 3 texts, like it or not. And those 3 texts are the ones within Tibetan history that are associated with our Kagyu tradition. It's 3 famous texts. So one is Gampopa's broad outline of all Buddhism, the ornament of precious liberation. The second one is this text, the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, the Mahayana treatise on the sublime continuum. And then the third one is called Profound Inner Meaning, and that's for people who've done a lot of practice, and in particular they've done 3-4 year retreat, and they have the knowledge of, or they have the experience, the inner experience of working with the energy bodies and doing yoga and so on. So that's a special text about very deep yogic things. It explains Tantra, basically, what we're doing. So those 3 texts one needs to know if one's going to be a meditator. So this text is very important, and my life as a translator has been translating these 3 texts. That's what we were asked to do by the 16th Karmapa. A wonderful, wonderful mission. So this text is very important. And so let's go to our classical introduction. Now, the first thing is to talk about the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. That's a big topic. It's sort of, in 45 years, what did the Buddha teach? Oh. Am I still with you? Can you wave if you're there? My screen suddenly went off and Zoom sent up a starter screen. Good. Okay, good. 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. For me to explain this properly, we need to look at everything the Buddha taught and put it in. So it can't be done in a few minutes. Well, it can, but it's not very satisfying. We had a course on this a few years ago, 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. So if you go to my YouTube teachings, and you'll find in there, if you type Ken Holmes, khenpoken, 3 turnings, then you'll find it. At least one whole session on the 3 turnings of the wheel of Dharma. But basically we're looking at the Buddha's teaching as happening in 3 steps. A basic level, a deepening of that basic level, and then the final conclusion. The first 2 levels are remedies. They are medicines. They are remedial The first level, the basic Dharma, we call it the Shravaka level, or Hinayana, is what must come first. And it's about getting rid of suffering. Suffering is what spoils everything. And then for ourselves, it's a big topic. I'm thinking of somebody who joined our study course, 3-year study course. And in the first module, the question was, why do we want to get rid of suffering? Isn't suffering part of everything? I mean, can you say it wouldn't be life without suffering? So why do we want to get rid of it? And if there's no suffering, there's no contrast, there's no happiness. Which as a theoretical question is all right. And that's what we do. We think ideas like that. But if I asked any one of you just now, would you like to suffer? I don't think so. Would you prefer something pleasant? Would you prefer something that's without problems, without... Would you rather be healthy or sick? Would you rather your mind was smooth and free or limited and angry and so on? Of course not. That's what we're talking about. First things first, suffering doesn't just spoil it for ourselves. We spoil other people's lives by making them suffer. Life's a bit of a mess in that way. We are very primitive human beings. Even with good intentions, we mess each other up a lot, and our planet and the world and so on. And so even if we're happy, maybe our happiness, like we see with environmental things, the happiness of having a phone involves the suffering of the people who dig out the minerals and all the rest of it. So suffering and getting rid of suffering is a first priority. And no matter what level or school of Buddhist you are, that remains a first level of priority. There's a lot of head stuff, elegant stuff, profound stuff, thinking, but basically tackling suffering must be our first priority. So the first phase of the Buddha's teaching goes through why do we suffer? Because of our karma. Why do we make karma? Because of we act in a certain way because our mind has anger, jealousy, desire, pride, ignorance. Why do we have those things? And then we see basically we have a misconception of a fixed me, a fixed self. So all of the first phase of the Buddha's teaching is about understanding that illusion, understanding the voidness of that illusion, so that we can understand there is no fixed me, and we can liberate what we call our stream of consciousness to make it suffer less and less, and in the end, no suffering at all. That's possible, doable, it's very technical. We need to meditate, we need a certain amount of understanding that guides our meditation, and in our life we need to conduct ourselves very purely. So we have what are called the 3 wheels of the turning, of the first turning, where Buddha teaches right conduct, meditation, and wisdom. So that's the first phase of the Buddha's teaching. It had to be the one he taught first. So famously, his first set of teaching was the 4 Noble Truths, which are all about that, the 4 truths of noble beings. So that first phase removes the obstacle to peace, to being not just in a state of peace, but at peace with ourselves, at peace with everyone else. First phase removes the obstacles to peace and brings peace. When that's in place, when people have understood that, when they've worked with it, when they have peace, then for some, the second phase of the Buddha's teaching, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, removes the second main obstacle, which is the obstacle to a clear mind. Totally clear meaning totally wise. So that's called the obstacle to true knowledge. And in a funny way, the obstacle to true knowledge is knowledge. It's dualistic knowledge. It's all the ideas through which we've constructed our understanding of everything. Ideas. We understand things through ideas, thoughts, notions, a view of reality. How we see the world. Like if you look at science, how science saw the world. It started with steam and mechanics, the Industrial Revolution. Steam, moving things, and then it kind of moved on, and there's an understanding of electricity and energy and chemistry and sort of the whole understanding, and then nuclear physics, but also biology, DNA. The vision you have through popular science, what we come across every day, is not the vision that even a top scientist 150 years ago would have had. Your view of life, your scientific view of life. I mean, you can't help but know about DNA, genetics. You might not know a lot, but you know it exists. You hear about somebody with a genetic problem, their DNA is missing this and that. You understand that much, even if you don't understand all of the biology. You hear about quarks and black holes and things like that. You might not understand the physics, but you know there's this universe now that's on a small level is made of all these tiny things, subatomic particles, and out there it's incredibly big with black holes. We all know that, don't we? 200 years ago, that wasn't there. So we can see through science how the way we understand who and what we are and the world we're in, the view of it changes. Just an example, the science. So our human minds have become quite rigidly set in the understanding you have and I have, and each person has, of reality. And that in itself, even though it's knowledge, which is on a relative level very useful, very meaningful, on an ultimate level, it is stopping us. It is blocking what we call our mind from knowing the real truth. It's like being asleep. So when you're asleep and dream, something's going on. There are people, there are things are happening. It's kind of all 5 senses are there and so on. But it ain't real. But we're totally lost in it. So to get rid of this sleep of fixed ideas, then the Buddha taught the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, which shows shunyata, emptiness, voidness of all those things, ideas in particular. But also, if we go back to the first turning, it becomes an antidote for where people who followed the first turning through to its conclusion got stuck. They got stuck at the end. So that's a long story, but basically, how do you get out of karma that causes the suffering and the emotions that cause the karma, the want, the desire, and all the pulsions? We see they come from fixed ideas that come from, all hinge around an idea of me. So in order to get rid of that, we teach there is no fixed me. There are the 5 aggregates. They each have their subdivisions. There's just these things happening all the time. It's like looking at physics and atoms and molecules, making longer term things happen. So we break it down and we become Buddhists with a new language. It's not me, I want, and the world of suffering language. It's the world of the 5 aggregates and perception, triggering emotion, and the 12 links of interdependence, and that makes karma. We get rid of our old worldly mindset for a Buddhist mindset. And you become a very, very good Buddhist, and you know all about it. You can explain in detail how the mind stream of consciousness works and so on. But you're stuck in a mindset full of ideas. And as long as those ideas are keeping your head busy, you can't experience the real truth. So all those ideas need to go. So there are all the teachings of Prajnaparamita, which work extensively through all the different areas that we turn into realities for ourselves, and shows how they are like dreams, they are like conjurations, they're like mirages, and so on. Not that they don't exist at all, but the way they exist is ephemeral, not as real as it seems. But anyway, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma is remedial. The first one gets rid of ego, the second turning gets rid of fixed ideas. We're getting rid of stuff. It's no, 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 no. First turning, no ego. Second turning, no nothing. No ego, no nothing. Nothing is real in its own right. So then, if you've done that work, and people have seen through all their illusions, including the Dharma illusions. We had this in the last course. Even karma, cause and effect is a remedial, relatively true illusion. It's not absolutely true, and so on. So, having done that work, the third turning of the wheel of Dharma inevitably takes us, when we've got rid of all the illusions, what's real? What's the truth when you take it all away? So that is the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. For those who've done the work, I do hope this is making sense. For those who've done the work, the Buddha can say, this is it. He can show, this is it. It's what these days we call a pointing out of the true nature of mind. There can be the being together in the truth of purity, clarity. For those who've done the work. If you've not done the work, what you're going to do immediately when you're sitting with Buddha in that truth is you can start thinking about it and defining it and telling yourself stories about it and saying this is non-dual and blah, 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 blah. You've lost it. You've lost the experience because your mind of this present moment is thinking. And it happens. It's the nature of profound experience. Whatever you do takes you up to it, so you reach a sort of a peak. And then the interpreting mind, the interpretative mind, starts telling you what happened. More and more, and you've lost it. And sometimes you don't even realize how much you've lost it until you go back to a moment of purity again. And so nice. And then you'll be thinking about that. And so it's kind of a process of peaking and peaking and peaking more frequently, and then learning to stay there without spotting it. This is why the first turning, me, having an experience, me, the Dharma practice, the Rinpoche, blah, 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 me, needs to go. And then once the me has gone, then all of the Dharma language and mindsets that helps us all the way along the path, they have to go to, so there can be pure being, which just is. So the third turning is about that. The third turning, in truth, is totally experiential. It is being Buddha. Full stop. But then, in order to help beings get to that state, there are the words, there are the teachings that talk about what being Buddha is. But talking about it isn't being it. Reading a romance novel is not the same as having an affair yourself. They're quite different. Reading the book and being in love are not the same thing. Although the book talks about it in all of different aspects, physical thoughts, blah, 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 the book is not the reality. All of the words about Buddha, Buddha nature, are not Buddha and Buddha nature. But the words help us. And in particular, they help us not get it wrong. So that's very helpful. So when talking about this text, Trungpa Rinpoche says, it's strange, He says, this Buddha mind, or for us, our Buddha nature, the Buddha mind that's inside us but locked up, he said, it's like a famous person that nobody's ever seen. This person lives in isolation. You can imagine it these days. They can probably, if they're very rich, they can afford a couple of 100 bodyguards and everyone to make sure nobody ever gets to see them or invade their privacy. So he said, nobody's seen this person. They don't even know if it's a man or woman. There's just, there's somebody and you know where they live, but you can't get close. So then you need clues. You get some binoculars, you look at their laundry line. What do they wear? Are they big? Are they small? Are they man? Are they a woman? What does their underwear look like? And so you've got then some clues. You bribe the rubbish bin, the people who take away the bins, so that you can look through what do they eat and whatever they've thrown away to give you some clues about how they live. Maybe you see the packaging of an exercise bike, so they exercise, right? Like that, you get more and more ideas that make some sense to us about this person that you're never going to actually meet head on like that. So the words are useful. So that when you do meet head on, like if you've worked out through the clues that it's a woman and she's so tall and so on like that, if you meet a man who's so short and so on, this isn't the inhabitant. You can be clear. In our meditation, when we get deep experience, blissful experience, peaceful experience, ecstatic experience, whatever it is, we will know, is this it? Is this Buddha mind? Am I enlightened or not? So we need to know about Buddha qualities and so on very clearly. So this text tells us in words, in ideas, what words and ideas can help us with Buddha nature. But you will never get Buddha nature through thought and ideas. You'll never think your way to it. No way. It will come only through meditation. And so that's important to know. We've got all these 400 verses of words and ideas to help us get closer to our Buddha nature. But what would only really take us to a direct experience, say all of a sudden you get an invitation to go and meet the person in this house. You can actually meet them, sit down with them, have a drink. We can only do that through meditation, Mahamudra meditation, Dzogchen meditation. So the third turning of the wheel of Dharma was taught by the Buddha on different occasions in some handful, 10, 12, 15 sutras. So the meaning of that is summed up by this text. And it's the reference for all of us. The second point in the traditional, so first point is 3 turnings. This is about the third turning. The second point is it sutra or is it shastra? Now this might sound quite academic, but sutra is what the Buddha taught, Buddha himself, during his lifetime. Is this sutra, Buddha's teaching, or is it shastra, which are all of the works of later Buddhists explaining the Buddha's teaching, Bodhisattva's way of life, or Abhidharma teachings, and so on. The works of later masters to explain the Buddha's intention, they're called shastra. The meaning in English is explanatory texts, not commentaries. A commentary is something a bit different. A commentary is you take a text and you comment on it idea by idea. So these aren't commentaries on this sutra and that sutra. It's looking more globally at the Buddha's teaching and saying, karma, Buddha taught this, and the Shastras explain it by referring to many of the Buddha's teachings throughout his lifetime. So Shastra. So is this a Shastra or is it Sutra? The actual title is Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra. So we could think it's a Shastra. It's written after the Buddha. It's written by, we'll come to that in a second, Asanga, under the influence of Maitreya. So it's a Shastra. But then other people say, but although Asanga gave us this text, he was a human being. He was inseparable from future Buddha Maitreya. So it's like what came through him was Maitreya's teaching. Maitreya's teaching is Buddha's teaching in 2 ways. One, Maitreya is the future Buddha, and he's already a 10th level bodhisattva. A 10th level bodhisattva can teach as well as a Buddha. No difference. No difference in their ability, quality of teaching. So it's like it comes from a Buddha. But also, the other way this could be considered Buddha's teaching is that when Buddha taught, he taught in several ways. One of the ways was to delegate. So he would, somebody would ask a question, and then he would ask one of his chief disciples, he would say, you answer this. And it said at the time when this happened, that Buddha's total blessing was kind of on the disciple who actually gave the words, the blah blah. So that's called blessed teaching. And even though it came out of the mouth of a disciple, it's considered the Buddha's teaching because it's 100% approved. Somebody's just passing on what Buddha taught them. So you could say, because this comes from Maitreya, who is the Buddha's regent until he becomes the next Buddha. And when Buddha left Tushita to come to this world, he appointed Maitreya Bodhisattva as his regent. So there's for two reasons we could say, no, this is sutra. It's direct from Buddha mind, an enlightened mind, totally enlightened. Two good arguments. The conclusion of Jamgon Kongtrul Rinpoche in his commentary and Trango Rinpoche in teaching us is that it is better to consider this as a shastra. Third point of the classical introduction is about the source. S-O-U-R-C-E, source, not sauce, as in tomato ketchup. Source, the source of these teachings. So this is not too interesting. It's because various schools developed within Buddhism. Then, later Buddhists, they want to know, where's this coming from? Which tradition? What's their party line? What are they trying to convince us of? What's the spin on this? Which lineage does this come from? That's quite a sort of valid question. Before you look at a text and all its details, you want to know which line they're pushing. And so some people would like to say that because this text comes from Asanga, and Asanga is very associated with the Chitramatrin tradition. In our last course, in many courses, we looked at the two main Mahayana schools are mind only, Chitramatrin, and Madhyamaka, middle way. So Asanga was like the big name in Chitramatrin. So is this a Chitramatrin text? As some people would say, it is because of him, because of the author. And our Kaju party line answer is no. This is not limited to Chitramatrin. And when we look at Asanga's work, and many of them, but amongst them, 5 key texts from Maitreya, then he presents both middle way, mainly middle way teachings, Madhyamaka. So he is beyond Chittamatrin, Madhyamaka. He is big mind, able to express things in both ways. And so the source really and truly is directly from Buddha mind. It's not from the party line of one tradition or another. That's the key point. The next point in the introduction is about the author. And so here we have a Sangha who becomes inseparable from Maitreya. So this is where we tell the story of a Sangha traditionally. That's curious. Our present 17th Jawakamapa in last years has spent a lot of time in textual research because of this whole issue of party lines, and because for centuries there's been a passing on of teachings and stories, and nobody's ever looked kind of back and said, is this true? Where does this come from? Whose idea was this? And so on. So he's passionate about the research into the original scriptures, what was there earliest in Tibetan and Chinese and Sanskrit, and so on and so on. So this is, how can you say, for me it's a bit awkward. The easiest thing would be to tell you exactly what I heard from Trangpa Rinpoche and Khenpo Sotim, and we leave it there. And that's the story of Asanga. Finished. Done and dusted. Except now if you do historical research, textual research with all the resources we have, computers and analysis of language, and so you can date things and so on, then quite who Asanga was leads scholars to lots of arguments. Nobody's totally clear. So, and then particularly his story, his life story. So anyway, we put him as born in the 4th century, some people say around 375 of our era. He was born, most people think, in the area that's now Peshawar in Pakistan, Swat Valley. In his time, this was the kingdom of Gandhara. Gandhara is a place where incredible Buddhist things happened in the development of Buddhism. So he was born there. Why was he born? Because of his mother, well, of course. But who was his mum? His mother at first was a nun called Prakasha Shila, which means purity of conduct. Nice name for a nun. She was very bright. She could see quite a lot of deterioration happening in the Buddha's teaching. She wanted to do something about it, but she realized that at that time, as a woman, she wouldn't have any weight, no matter how much she studied, no matter how much she meditated. And she had a vision, a divine instruction that she should give birth to 2 children, and that they would be able to they'd be able to help Buddhism radically. So it's what she did. She went off, she found a dad for the first child and got pregnant, and thank you, and that was all she wanted. And she gave birth to Asanga. And then later, there the research varies. Some say 1 year later, some texts, some say quite some time later, maybe 10 dozen years. She had a second child, Vasubandhu. Those 2 figures are huge in Buddhist history. In Indian Buddhist history, Vasubandhu did so much for the Theravada tradition, for the Shravaka Hinayana teachings, before he converted to Mahayana. And then Asanga, he is for us the second big name in Mahayana. Nagarjuna, Asanga, they gave us Mahayana. teaching. Those two. So he's huge. But then his brother Vasubandhu, his younger brother, once he converted to Mahayana, gave us incredible commentaries, teachings like the 10 Bodhisattva level teachings, sutras and so on. So those two kids had an incredible impact on Buddhist history. And the story is fascinating. So she saw this decline happening. She gave birth to these two children, and she made sure they got the best Buddhist education. So, in fact, the younger son, Vasubandhu, he was very attracted to the Buddhism that was going on almost next door in Kashmir. They're fascinating, they're lovely stories, we don't have the time, but they were a bit snooty, a bit snobby, snooty, arrogant, and they thought the Gandharan people were peasants, and that the Gandhara Buddhist study institutions, which were mainly Mahayana, were a kind of losing it, going weird. They didn't let the Gandharan people in to Kashmir to study Dharma. They were very strong Theravada, amongst other things, very strong Shravaka. But Vasubandhu was very attracted. So he got across the border by pretending to be a crazy person. He just looked so gone and acting so weird as a kind of beggar that people took no notice. And then he had to learn how to speak like Kashmiris, act like Kashmiris. So he disguised himself as a Kashmiri and studied Theravada for a long time, became a great master in his own right, until people started, people get jealous. So that this guy is not really a Kashmiri, this guy's Gandharan. Anyway, that's Vasubandhu's story. While all of that was happening, what happened to Asanga? Well, the traditional story is that he studied Prajna Paramita. He understood the words, but he didn't feel he really got the meaning in his heart. And this worried him. And so either through his own intention, or some say through his mother's guidance, he went into retreat to meditate on Maitreya, Buddha, to get the deep, instant, non-conceptual understanding of Prajna Paramita. So he meditated on Maitreya for 3 years, traditional 3-year and a bit retreat. And to put it in brief, he did all the practice every day, very faithfully. He got no special experience, and he thought this isn't going to work, and he was going to give up, and he went out. And he'd been 3 years in retreat, and he's just looking around, and he sees in the cliff face holes that are very, very smooth at the entrance. And he's been meditating 3 years. He's, let's say, doesn't sound very nice, but maybe he's got time. He's a little bit spaced out. Right? He's got nothing special to do. He's looking at the cliff face, thinking, so smooth. It's because generation after generation of pigeon has gone in and out, and their feathers brushing against the exit have made that rock so smooth. So maybe I've not put enough effort, seeing how all of those generations of pigeons can make even feathers can make rock smooth. Maybe I need to practice more. So he went back in for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, still no special result, no deep, total understanding of Prajna Paramita, Shunyata. So he comes out. This time he meets a person, It's quite something if you've been in retreat for 3 years to meet a person. You don't have people in there. It's just you meeting another person. It's big. And this person has got a little iron bar and rubbing it with a cloth like this, rubbing a bit of rough iron with a cloth. And he's going, what you doing? And I said, oh, I need a needle. I'm making a needle, sewing needle. Right. Back in. 3 more years. After those 3 more years, no result. You're getting the story now, the pattern. He comes out, and this time he goes quite away, and he meets somebody who's on a mountainside digging. And he says, no, what you doing? He said, well, you see down there in the valley, that's my house. And it's in the shade all the time because of this blooming mountain. So I'm taking the mountain out the way. That way I can get a bit of sunshine in my house. So he's not daft by now. He's getting it, right? There's something weird going on here, Of course, he could just build a new house on top of the mountain, but he's not. No. If I'm seeing this, there's a message in here. Back in. 3 more years. And then same thing. No result. So the story goes, then he comes out. And that's 12 years of his life. He's quite young. 12 years of young life. You could imagine he can be quite depressed. Quite, did I get it all wrong? Have I thrown away? Maybe I should have been something else. And he is wondering, and he sees a dog, and that dog is in a wretched state. It's crawling along, dragging its rear end, where there's a big wound. The wound is infested with worms. The dog herself, it's a bitch, is very angry. She's barking at him, he can't get near. But he's just so moved, so overwhelmed with compassion at the suffering that's going on in this animal. He thinks it's because of that wound. I've got to treat the wound somehow. So he starts to approach the dog. She barks, but gradually he kind of befriends the dog. But he realizes, I've got to treat the wound. But from another point of view, that wound is the home of the worms. And if I take them out in a rough way, I'm going to kill them, break them. And he has a respect for life. And somehow, these pussy wounds that stink and worms in them, the vision comes to him, my tongue is soft enough and wet enough to take these worms out one by one. It's the only thing that can help. And it's disgusting, but he can't face. He closes his eyes and bends down, puts out his tongue to take the first worm, and he can't feel anything. And he opens his eyes and he looks, and there's Maitreya Buddha in front of him. His first thought is, where were you all this time? Like 12 years. I've been calling on you every day, thinking of you, visualizing you, doing all the procedure. And Maitreya Buddha says, I've been here every single moment. I made you see the pigeonholes. I was the man with the needle. I was the man digging the hillside. I've been here, but you couldn't see me because of your stream of consciousness, ignorance, and so on. And he said, but now all of your retreat work, plus this moment of intense compassion, has enabled you to see me. And of course, he was the dog as well. And so he said, if you don't believe me, go to the village. I'll sit on your shoulder. You can see me. Ask people what they see. So he goes to the village and he's saying, what can you see? Because he can see Buddha Maitreya and feel the presence there. And people are just looking at him because they can't see anything. They're saying, no, sorry, fella, can't see anything. And they say, come on, can't you see? No, nothing there really. Till he meets a pious old practitioner. He says, what can you see? What can you see? She said, what are you doing carrying a dead dog on your shoulder? So that person who had a little, had a good heart, good mind, could get something, but not see what he saw. So then after that, he spends, depending on which version you look at, either 25 years or 50 years in Maitreya's Pure Land of Tushita, where he receives teachings, which he gives to our world as the 5 great treatises of Maitreya. These are so important for us in Mahayana Buddhism. And one of them is this text that we are studying. So of those 5, so then he becomes a great teacher in India after that. And he lived a very long life. So of those 5 teachings of Maitreya, the world was ready for 3 of them, and they were promulgated, they were spread quite widely. They went to Tibet later on in the 8th century. The other 2, this text we're studying, the Jut Lama, and the distinguishing Dharma from Dharmata, are very deep texts, and they were only transmitted on a one-to-one basis to people who were very mature in their meditation. Otherwise, they were concealed. So the story goes that one of the texts was concealed in a stupa, seems to have been a brick stupa, and that much later on, Maitreya, who was one of Mapa's gurus, was passing by the stupa, and in his vision he saw light streaming out from the crack in the stupa, and he had the stupa opened, and there he found a copy of this text that we are studying. And after that it was spread in the what are called the Sama traditions, the later schools in Tibet, not the Nimapa school, which is 8th century, but the 11th, 12th century schools. So let's leave the introduction there. Still a few more points to go, and let's come to the text itself in a simple way. And then next week we don't have a session on this. Next week is our monthly Tonglen. So in 2 weeks' time, when we come back, we'll look in adequate detail. But let's first, where did it go? See, I do want to start the text itself so that we make the connection today. So if you're following the text, if you have it, because I sent it out, or you have the book, then we are page 45. Now, in the structure of the text, and you have this wonderful chart which shows you the structure if you're interested, the whole text is in 2 parts. Part 1 is about the goal to be attained. The 3 refuges, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, as a goal to be attained, a result. That's the first part, the result. Second part is the cause for that result, where we look at Buddha nature, enlightenment, Buddha qualities, Buddha activity. It's because of those, they're the cause, that we can become that result. So when we enter into that first section of the text, then it tells us the title. In Sanskrit, Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra. In Tibetan, Tekpa Chempa Jut Lame Tenche. in English, the ultimate Mahayana treatise on the changeless continuity of the true nature. The ultimate truth, Mahayana treatise, text, on the changeless continuity, a continuum. So this is the word Tantra. It's called the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra. Tantra means continuous. Literally, it means thread, like a thread, continuous. And when we practice Tantra as a type of Buddhism, all of the tantric practices are there to connect us with this changeless thread of Buddha mind that's there all the time. Changeless continuum, changeless continuity. Of what? Of our true nature. That's the first introductory verse. Not numbered. And it's followed by homage to all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, which is the author's homage, always to show us that they are not giving us something new from their ideas, but they are passing on something already elaborated by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But let's come back to this term, Tantra, this changeless continuity. In a way, if you get that, well, you don't need the rest of the book. We can just stop there. You don't need to come back for the rest of the teachings. So let's take an example of a king. And king is a human being. The king has wealth, has responsibilities, has king's work to do, and so on. The court, the queen, all of that's part of who the king is, what the king does. Question is, at night time, if the king sleeps and the king dreams he's a camel, is he a king or is he a camel? What do you think? When the king is dreaming he's a camel, is he a camel? Because that's 360 degrees full Dolby stereo surround experience of the dream. I can't quite make a camel noise. I should have said a horse, then I could have. But anyway, he's a camel. But then that dream will come and go. And he'd be anything else, a frog, a human, an object. All the time he was dreaming. Did he stop being king? When he wakes up the next morning, all of it's still there. The wealth, the responsibilities, the activity. That continuous thing while he's king, despite his falling asleep and dreaming each night, there is that continuous presence of everything his royalty means. It's quite interesting when we receive empowerments, or let's say not when we these days receive them, but when in the old days of pure Tantra in retreat, when people received empowerment, it's an enthronement where you are enthroned back into your true nature. You are told, you're not really Ken. You're really Chinrezig. You receive an Chinrezig empowerment. You are shown who you really are and taught how to live as though you were Chinrezig. So this changeless continuity never changes. Always there. This is what this text is about. And it's going to be presented in two ways. As a result, what Dharma is taking us to, which is the three famous refuges, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. That's the result. And showing us how do we get there. I can't do my fingers properly. We've got 7. Okay, how do we get there? Buddha, Dharma, Sangha is through having Buddha nature and through the Buddha's enlightenment and teaching us and the Buddha's qualities and the Buddha activity. That's the cause. It's a rather unusual way of looking at it. So at this point, you need to understand refuge. Not refuge as you've studied it most of the time, which is called causal refuge. It's what we need to know about Buddha, Dharma, Sangha so that we can practice. We take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So Buddha is our teacher, the one who teaches us. And the Dharma are the teachings, and the Sangha are those who hold the teachings. All of that is what makes sense in our world, to us, in our level where we're at, about what Buddha is. The value of Buddha for us is as a teacher. And the teachings of the Dharma and the Sangha are the people who communicate that. So that's called cause refuges, because by taking refuge in those, it causes us to follow the path, and we don't just take refuge at the beginning. Every day, and as our understanding of Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha deepens, it's our main support, all the way until we ourselves are Buddha. Causal refuge is the cause for us reaching the result. But what we're looking at here in the first 3 chapters of these 7 chapters are the refuges not as a cause, but as a result. In other words, what is Buddha once you get there and you are Buddha? What's the real Buddha? Not Buddha as far as people taking refuge and following the path, experience, need to know. But what's the real Buddha giving rise to all of that? What is it that Shakyamuni, when he meditated and so on, became? What is the ultimate Buddha? What is the ultimate Dharma? Ultimate meaning in the end. Where does all the Dharma come from? The words, the ideas, the practices, the methods. Where does it all come from? In the end. Ultimate means in the end. It's very appropriate here. And then in the end, what is it that makes the Sangha? So not the Sangha as like people who teach us, or Bodhisattva Sangha, the wonderful pure minds of light that we can encounter in advanced meditation. But what is it that really makes them Sangha? This is what we'll be looking at in the first 3 chapters. And that is called the causal. That is called the result, the 3 refuges as results. So it says the entire body of this is verse 1. Now we're on the numbered verses. The entire body of this treatise can be condensed into the following 7 Vajra abodes. 7 chapters, but they're called Vajra abodes because each of them is about a truth that is indestructible. The Vajra, which was the weapon of Indra in the old myths, is indestructible. It can destroy anything. It's the ultimate weapon, and it can't itself be destroyed. Ultimate truth of being destroys all the illusions. And in itself, it cannot be destroyed. So that ultimate truth of being is presented in this text in 7 areas. So we get a list of them: Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, Buddha nature, enlightenment, enlightened qualities, and enlightened activities. So it says, these are in a natural order, and one should know that the first 3 abodes are derived from the introductory chapter, and the latter 4 from the wise and victorious qualities chapters of the Dharani Rajasvara Sutra. That means the sutra that is like the king of all mantras. That's the name of the sutra. So I just wanted to get into the actual verses. We'll leave the verses there. What it just said is sort of accurate. And that's where the historical research comes in. It says, these 7 Vajra abodes that this text falls into 7 sections. It says the first 3 comes from the introductory chapter, the remaining 4 from the chapter about the qualities of the Buddhas. Of this text, King of Mantras Sutra. Well, if you actually get to that text, and it's very hard to find, it's been very hard in history to find that text. It looked like it disappeared. I think they've found copies now in Chinese. But it's quoted so much that people have an idea of what that sutra actually said, but the actual sutra didn't survive. But it doesn't look as though that is quite 100% accurate. Now, if you're interested in this, which you're probably not, but if you are, then this incredible Buddhist scholar, Karl Brunholzer, Karl has done, I don't know, I think he does the work of about 10 human beings at the same time. He has produced so many translations and commentary, and the quality is incredible. So he produced a text in 2015, which is called When the Clouds Part, which is a very thorough book about this text and its commentaries and historical research, and it's about almost 1,200 pages, and it will cost you about 80 euros, or you can get the Kindle. If you're interested, then there's amazing information in there about where these 7 Vajra abodes, 7 Vajra chapters of our text, where they do source themselves in the sutras, the teachings the Buddha gave in the 3rd turning of the wheel of Dharma, if you're interested. The main point for us, without any doubt, is that what Maitreya and Asanga do in this text is give us the juice, the main substance, all the key points that come in the Buddha's teaching of the 3rd turning of the wheel of Dharma. No doubt about that. So scholars can quibble about, oh, this came more from that sutra, or this came more from that. It doesn't matter. What we are going to study is so clear, and it gives us the deal, the picture of the Buddha's 3rd turning of the wheel of Dharma, whereas all the other sutras, like the Dharmacharya Raja Sutra and so on, they give us a bit of the picture. We are so fortunate. This text was hidden between Asanga's time and the 11th century. 700 years, if we were alive then as Buddhists in India, you couldn't have got to it. Maitreya spread these teachings, gave them to Mapa. they came down through our lineage. Next week we'll look at how it came generally to Tibet, these teachings. We are so lucky to get this brilliant summary of the Buddha's third turning of the wheel of Dharma through our own teachers and the transmission of this text. So let's see. So let's stop there. It's been a long session. As always, I wanted to do too much, but I did want to at least get us into the verses and not spend all of the time. So I saw Mika asking a question. The story earlier on about the meditator was about Asanga, A-S-A-N-G-A. So let's dedicate. May whatever virtue was created by this session contribute to the state of omniscience being attained, through the main enemy, our mind's defilements, being completely defeated. Through that, may each and every sentient being become free from the ocean of existence, troubled by its waves of rebirth, aging, sickness, and death. May this precious bodhicitta arise in those in whom it's not arisen. May its development know no setbacks, and may it increase ever more and more. And through this virtue, may we quickly achieve Mahamudra and establish every single sentient being in that same accomplishment. Over to you. So I don't know if you've got any comments or any questions, anything.
Yeah, at the beginning, Ken, you questioned whether Buddha nature was the appropriate title for this course, and I see that because it's the fourth of 7 chapters. But maybe if you're aiming to finish, like get through the 4 chapters, so the last one is Buddha nature, maybe that's okay, provided we understand that it's not just about Buddha nature. My main question is, you also mentioned that there are other translations, and I was wondering how many are there? Why did they think it was necessary? And how you and Katia having done one, and how do they differ significantly from yours?
I can't really answer that second question. I mean, I don't know why people did them. I think translators get very touchy about terminology, amongst other things, and their own understanding. And they want to put things, like I say voidness, some people like to say emptiness, and people argue about this. And in the end, there is no right one or wrong one. It's a question of preference often. So I can imagine that different translators wanted to make their own version. There's also a thing about different organizations sometimes wanting to produce their own version. When we come in the next session, in 2 weeks' time, we go back to the classical introduction, we'll see that there are 2 styles of presentation of this text. There's a more scholarly way, and there's a meditator's way. And the way we were asked to do this was using the meditative tradition. So I think Carl's work, he wanted to put a lot more scholarly research into it. And there is brilliant scholarly research into the different texts. It's absolutely wonderful. And I think that's part of a movement that happened in the last 10, 15 years, Dharmacharya inspired, to make Buddhist academic work respectable for academics in universities, where you need notes, research, cross-references, all the sort of thing that fits a description of objective thinking worthy of publication and so on. So I think that could have been part of why Carl produced that. But I mean, he's just a dynamo. He produces I think he probably wants to do everything by the time he's finished, and it will be good work. I mean, he's very, very highly qualified.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. But for the first one, why this term Buddha nature was coined in the West, it doesn't translate from Tibetan at all. It's not a translation. It was coined to translate an idea. But when we talk about it, it's from our point of view. It's about relative truth. And we are human beings with the possibility of enlightenment. And for that, we need to know that we've all got it in us. It's our Buddha nature, as opposed to our samsaric nature, which covers it up. So it's very much in terms of human beings, what they're capable of. And in the next session, we explore at length, the term Gotra. Gotra is about that. And it has multiple meanings in Sanskrit and multiple meanings in terms of meditation practice. There's no one word in English that can ever translate it. In Tibetan, it's Rik. That's the Buddha nature part, the potential. But this text is looking, as we'll see in the first 3 chapters, at not just the potential in us, but what Buddha really is, what Dharma really is, what Sangha really is, not what they are from our point of view, whatever we can get of them, whatever we can use of them, where all of that comes from. And the same with Buddha's enlightened activity. Where does that come from? So if you take a mirror as an example, for instance, a mirror can reflect a flower, it can reflect a bicycle, it can reflect all sorts of things. It can reflect darkness as well, which is quite interesting. And a mirror can reflect invisible things, like heat, we can't see it. So we could explore all the things that a mirror can reflect. That will be relative truth. But if we're looking at how does it do that? What is the mirror itself that makes all those reflections? So Buddha activity as we witness it, Buddha's manifest as incarnations, as all the different manifestations in different ways to different beings. We're not looking at what they are relatively in each circumstance, but how is all of that possible? So we have 7 chapters, and the one that focuses on our human potential is mainly the 4th one. So we can't say this text is about Buddha nature. It's about Gotra. So when we come to it, this is in the next session. When we come to it, we see this text has 2 different titles. There's the Mahayana Uttara Tantra Shastra, the Mahayana treatise on the ultimate changeless continuum, but it's also called the treasury, Vibhanga, of the Ratna Gotra. Gotra is this nature of the lineage of the presence of the Ratna, the 3 jewels, 3 refuges. So that's another title. So just to say Buddha nature teachings is very rough, and it doesn't cover all of that.
Okay, thank you.
Ken, I'm
Hi.
a little confused still about the difference that you were starting to explain between refuges as causal and as a result. I wasn't sure if that's two different ways of approaching the same thing. Could you maybe say a wee bit more about that?
Yeah, I think it will become clearer when we do the chapters, because they actually tell us what we mean by Buddha. Like when we take refuge in mainly the Buddha Shakyamuni as our teacher, who gave the world the Dharma and all of his teachings. And then we take, more generally in Mahayana, refuge in the Buddha as the three kayas, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, Nimanakaya. But two of those are manifestations. So it's very hard using language. If we say the same thing through two different points of view, in terms of philosophy, that's doesn't work. In ordinary language, sure, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha as anyone other than Buddhas will experience them, or as Buddha mind itself experiences them. To make it a bit clearer and not just words and theory, in our journey to enlightenment, there will be one amazing moment. Only happens once. You can't go back and repeat it. The best moment ever is the moment we reach what is first bodhisattva level, if we go the long path of the bodhisattva, or when we reach stable recognition of the true nature of our minds through meditation practice. Now, at that moment, there's a flip over that happens. Rather than being a me who experiences, and who experiences Buddha mind from time to time, Buddha mind becomes your default state. It's the new you. And your history and everyone else's is kind of not you. It's there to be worked with still. It's your history. But the whole way you are, what you feel, is Buddha mind. That is, when that flip over happens, it's called the moment of overwhelming joy, first bodhisattva level. So from that point onwards, what Buddha means, what Dharma, where all the Dharma comes from, will be in your heart. It will be there, alive and running. And we're talking about that understanding of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, which will be elaborated in the chapters.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I can see the kind of direction you're pointing in, but to be continued. Thank you.
Yeah, well, yes, to be continued. And to be continued in terms of what words can encompass. You know, remember, we're still looking at the laundry line and we're still going through the bins to try and understand what we're talking about. If you want the direct encounter, then we have to meditate.
Right.
Mika, I saw Mika, you ask a question.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
Part of this course, long time no see.
Yeah, long time, Mika.
Yeah. I'm doing my ceremonial tea practice and doing acting, but it's difficult to learn this Maitreya thing. Yeah. Maybe I say just few words because it's the Maitreya I had like about 10 years ago, like 2 years, I quit everything in spiritual meditation, like everything. I just wanted to feel to be like natural, like organic self, like there is no any practice what I'm doing like many years, because I wanted to see the point where I am, like just doing nothing, like nothing. Even my tea master says that every morning and evening there must be meditation, and that is like sort of Zen priest stuff. But then I got this, that if I need to bring one this kind of choose something in my altar, like after like about 2 years of doing nothing spiritual practice, and then I start to miss so much that I have still like gift to practice and teach also my this ceremony teaching. So then I was thinking that there come this why I'm in this course, and even though I do more this Chada and Chen practice, so then I find that I put only one in my altar and I need to think a lot, and then I live there Maitreya, because this is something like for the future. It's very different. The statue is sitting and everybody else are like in the sitting pose, and there is this symbolic of talking to the old religion and not only maybe Buddhist, that it's combining and being like this infinite knot between like bigger picture of this teaching people to also out from the Buddhist field, and that was doing me so big impression. So this is very nice to be in this course and learning this the origin. And then I would like to ask about how to really study this book, because your book is very big work, and I don't really understand yet. There is so many big teachings there. So how it would be best to study with these lessons that we do until the spring, that you talk something about the 45 page. Is it would be like, if wanting to support this study, what we do today for everybody here, that what would be good amount of study the book for this lesson, for this what you talk today? That not too much, but something that is possible to understand for everybody, or at least most of us.
Yeah, well, these talks are about 1.5 hours, and although everyone's got their own life to lead and they're often very busy, there is at least a week until the next talk. So for me as a teacher, then what would be ideal is if people do have time to not just attend the talks, but then to sit with the material. So depending on each week, some things are very straightforward, you understand them, some things are not. So it means going through the talk again, either online or you go through your notes or whatever. And any area that you weren't clear about or you're uncomfortable with, you didn't feel you agreed with it and so on, then we need to sit with it more and think, what was Ken trying to say here? Do I agree? Do I understand it? And just spending time is the main thing. If you are a person capable of devotion, then also we would sit in the presence of Maitreya or invoking Maitreya Buddha and asking for Maitreya's guidance to help us understand the words. Today I think was fairly straightforward. It's about history and it's not deep concepts. I think it's when it's about different Buddhist schools and history, if you're not familiar with the history and the schools, of course it's complicated, but it's not something you absolutely need to know. I don't think today's was difficult, but in future sessions some verses might be more difficult, and then we spend whatever time we've got trying to make the best of it.
Yeah, thank you. It would be nice if there is some, like, you give this like explaining some topic and then maybe saying in these next lessons that maybe you maybe talk like 10 minutes of one topic, and then you say after that if you want deeper knowledge of this, you can find this from the page 60 to 80. Then everybody can put in the notes that, okay, this is the point, and if I want to learn more, I can go to this page from your book, and then it will be easier with trying to myself find these 300 pages and you talk something.
No, we're going through. No, it's not. It's easy. We're going through the book page by page.
Page by page.
So here, we're not hopping about from here to there. So whatever is key explanation in the book, I've put in the black text, which is the commentary. The actual verses are in red. And what I've done in black is to sum up the main teachings from Trangul Rinpoche and Surtim Gyaltsen Rinpoche about this. So it's simple. That's all you need to know. And then, yeah.
So now we are about in the page 45 or something like that.
No, today we're in, I don't think so. Oh yeah, that's where we got to today.
Ah,
So,
okay. That's why I was wanting to know. Yeah, because I wasn't sure. So if I want to learn myself and others also.
we started page 21, classical introduction, and we went up to page 45. But I'm coming back to this group of pages, classical introduction. I'll be coming back to this. I just didn't want to spend this whole session there.
It's the pigeon toy story in the book.
Sorry?
It's the pigeon story. It was so
Oh yeah.
One
That's in
of
the
the most beautiful stories what I heard in Buddhism. It was like totally like listening like your magical words. I was like feeling they come somewhere very, very far. It was an amazing story. So it's in the book. What is the
It's in the
page?
book. What is, I don't know, but it's in there. It says, it's in the section, the source of these teachings. Story of Asanga. Page 31.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Mika.
I can, when you refer to page numbers, maybe you could make it clear you're referring to the book or to the course document that you sent out, because they're not the same.
They should be the same now. I think
Really?
I fixed it. I think I fixed the PDF. The PDF, I made a PDF of this book some years ago. And then some people came back and they said that the page numbers are not the same, because when you make a PDF, the first page is page 1. Whereas this is like a classical book where you've got pages with Roman numbers, and then page 1 comes quite a way in. So I think I fixed that when I made the PDF I sent out to people.
Okay, I'll check. Maybe it's me that's confused.
Yeah, I need to check that. Thank you. Okay, maybe we're finished for today then. So next week is a Tonglen practice, and we come back to Jutlama in 2 weeks from now. Wish you all a very safe, good time until then. Take good care.
Thank very much, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Best wishes all.
Cheers.
Thank you very much, Ken.